Hey everybody, have you heard the news? Everybody's gonna be voting blue. Yeah, that's right, you know it's true. Everybody's gonna be voting blue. If you know what's good for you, then you better get out and vote blue. Yeah, if you know what's good for you, you better get out and vote blue. No matter what you do.
People did not think it was appropriate for you to be here today. You have pushed false claims about some of your rivals, from Nikki Haley to former President Barack Obama, saying that they were not born in the United States, which is not true. You have told 4 congresswomen of color who were American citizens to go back to where they came from. You have used words like animal and rabid to describe black district attorneys. You've attacked black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist. You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort. So my question, sir, now that you are asking black supporters to vote for you, why should black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question in such a horrible manner. First question. You don't even say, hello, how are you? Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network. And I think it's disgraceful that I came here in good spirit. I love the black population of this country. I've done so much for the black population of this country, including employment, including opportunity zones with Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, which is one of the greatest programs ever for black workers and black entrepreneurs. I've done so much, and and I say this, historically black colleges and universities were out of money, they were stone cold broke, and I saved them and I gave them long-term financing, and nobody else was doing it. I think it's a very rude introduction. I don't know exactly why you would do something like that. And let me go a step further. I was invited here and I was told my opponent, whether it was Biden or Kamala, I was told my opponent was going to be here. It turned out my opponent isn't here. You invited me under false pretense. And then you said, you can't do it with Zoom. Well, where's Zoom? She's going to do it with Zoom and she's not coming. And then you were half an hour late. Just so we understand, I have too much respect for you to be late. They couldn't get their equipment working or something was wrong.
Mr. President, I would love if you can answer the question on your rhetoric and why you believe that black voters should trust you with another 4 years.
I have been the best president for the black population since Abraham Lincoln. That's my answer.
Better than President Johnson, who signed the Voting Rights Act?
And for you to start off a question and answer period, especially when you're 35 minutes late because you couldn't get your equipment to work, in such a hostile manner, I think it's a disgrace. I really do.
Let me just ask a follow-up, sir.
Or would you?
Oh, absolutely.
And who would?
I think I'd know.
How would you make that decision?
I think I'd know. Look, if I came onto a stage like this and I got treated so rudely as this woman treated me.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm fine with it because she was very rude, sir. Very rude. That was that wasn't a question. She
Sir,
didn't ask me a question. She gave a statement. That wasn't a question.
I repeated your statement, sir, actually.
I have been the best president for the black population since Abraham Lincoln. That's my answer.
Trump made this statement to a room full of black people at the National Association of Black Journalists in Chicago. This is obviously a false and self-aggrandizing claim, but I'll respond as though he made this comment out of pure ignorance. He's right. Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation was no doubt one of the most important moments in American history broadly and black history specifically. But despite their best efforts to minimize it, there has been a lot of history since. It was Harry Truman who who in 1948, 2 years after Trump was born, it was him who desegregated the U.S. military and signed executive orders eliminating discrimination in the U.S. government. It was Lyndon B. Johnson who signed some of the most consequential legislation in this country's history. The Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, and the Fair Housing Act. Laws that provided equal protection for all Americans, but especially for Black Americans, who still experience racial discrimination at higher rates to this day. And since we're talking about discrimination, it was your Justice Department, Mr. Trump, that sought to roll back the anti-discrimination protections of the Civil Rights Act, effectively trying to undo something that protects Black people. It was Donald Trump's Opportunity Zones program, an initiative that he loves to praise in front of Black people, that has accelerated gentrification and, according to ProPublica, provided tax breaks for the extremely wealthy and disproportionately white.
Opportunity Zones with Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, which is one of the greatest programs ever for Black workers and Black entrepreneurs.
What's painfully obvious is that Donald Trump is out of his historical and social depth when talking about what's good for Black people. And the question is, why do we keep listening?
And now, ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've been waiting for. Trucker John. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Do y'all hear me? I was just finishing up some toast. Oh, I'm totally translucent. I gotta try to fix this. It looks like I have a blue mustache. Let's see here. Does that help? A little bit. Let's see. What about this? Is that a little bit better? It's a little bit better. I think that's about as good as I'm going to get it. All right, hopefully you guys can hear me. I see my microphone has a green light. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. It's 9:23 a.m. I'm getting a little bit of a late start, and I'm probably going to have to end a little bit early because I got to get to my eviction sealing clinic at noon. So we'll be doing that. Looks like it's already 84 degrees. We're going to get a high of 97 today. Another warm day here in Vegas on this May 27th. Hope you all had a good weekend. 3-day weekend for a lot of us. So I hope you had a good one. And so here we are. And that opening was, one that I had used during the campaign, right, last year. And, you see that and you just wonder, how in the hell did he win? And I know we all have lots of speculation about the election and all that, but still, regardless, I just shake my head. I'm like, I'm watching that intro. I'm just like, and the motherfucker still won, and he still won after being after saying those things he did, and he still won. It's not right. It's just not right, man. I'm st- I think I've been saying that ever since election night, or this isn't right. Something's not right. Anyhow, let's look at the chat. We got Jolie's first. All right, thank you, Jolie. Thanks for being in here. Roxanne Epstein's in the next one. We got CR in here. Pamela is fourth. Paul Burrows is in there. Says, so these murdered hornets, do you send them a list? I didn't hear the murder hornet story, but we get those stories every now and then about killer bees and murder hornets, all that kind of stuff. Let's see. Yeah, CR's here. Paul Burrows. Hello, Paul Burrows. Jen up the base is here. Says, let's go Giants. Dodgers beat the Guardians last night. Or yesterday. So there. Penny2 Creates says, hello, TJ and Loungers. Donald is such a disgusting creature. He's a stone inside of a human skin suit. He's something. He's disgusting, that's for sure. Hello, William. William's here. Good to see you. This fine morning, or I guess it could be afternoon for some of you. Some of yous. Robert Perez is here. Robert Perez says, top of the morning, Chuck and John, and hello to all the fighters who won't give up. Good morning to you. Top of the morning from Robert Perez down San Diego way. Deborah Murphy's here. Hey, Deborah. Midas Kevin Anderson. Hello, Midas Kevin. Good to see you. Tim Farrell's here. I got a thumbs up from Jolie, so I guess that means you guys can hear me okay. Yeah, there's Pam J. Everyone's saying hello. Jen up the base says, Trucker John, I wish I could say that the blue beard distracted me from those pesky eyebrow hairs. Can't wait. Please get TJ a pair of tweezers. No. I mean, I can't even see my eyebrows. So you must be watching me on some really nice high-def big screen TV or something. Because I can't even, it looks like I don't even have eyebrows. You know? I look like I have bald eyebrows. Oh, sorry about that. Sorry about coughing in the microphone. Rubber Red says, good morning to the eyebrow that won't capitulate. That's right. The eyebrow will not be ignored. You guys, oh my God. Now I'm going to get a total complex about the eyebrow. Exhausted Liberals here. Hey, Exhausted Liberal, good to see you. Thanks for joining us here in the Old Drivers Lounge. Well, we talk about a variety of topics, not the least of which is my eyebrows. Exhausted Liberal says he won because the Dems lied about the health of Joe Biden and didn't have a primary to choose a good candidate. Well, add that to the list. I think there's a big, giant list. I don't think it's just that. And I don't even know if Joe Biden, if you're talking about lied because he didn't say that he had cancer, I don't think he knew he had cancer at that point. I'm not sure. So I don't think there's anything that says that he knew anything about his health, other than the fact that he did get sick a few times. I think he caught COVID. They didn't lie about that, I don't think, right? I think Joe Biden, when he decided to run again, I think he at that point, I think he felt fine. I don't think he didn't know he had cancer back then. That was a long time ago. I think he felt fine and thought, well, okay, I'm going to give this another run. Let's keep it going. We've got things rolling. The economy's rolling. Let's keep it going. But at that age, things can turn quickly, health-wise. And I think that's what happened. And, and we were well into the campaign by then. I don't think he lied. I'll blame it on, I think a large part of the blame goes to the media. Because for every time they mentioned, Joe Biden did this, Joe Biden did that, some faux pas, some where he misspoke, he said the wrong thing, or he looked a little bad. They never said anything about Trump, and Trump was just as bad as far as his faux pas, as far as his stumbles, and the media barely even mentioned Trump. It was so one-sided. It was so, so hypocritical. I would blame it on the media coverage, and the unfair coverage, and the double standard, the unfair treatment. Yeah, exhaustive liberal. I guess you're the know-it-all. Where were you last summer? Where were you a year ago? Were you telling us that then, or do you have the benefit of hindsight? Like we all do now, right? Josh is lurking and has chores to do, or is doing chores, I guess. James Williams, that would have convinced a few after his first term, but he announced he was running again before Biden was sworn in. Hey, Brooklyn, New York's here. Brooklyn, New York 471. So hi, I'm in the library. So I'm just saying hi. I love retirement. Well, good on you, Brooklyn. I'm glad you're enjoying your retirement. Thanks for being here. Thanks for hanging out with us. And I hope my eyebrow's not too distracting. Robert Perez says a fun fact, a hurricane is wet from the standpoint of water. WJT. Aaron West is now here, so we are now at full mod capacity. So thank you for being here, Aaron and Joel. Thank you so much. Paul Burrell says, I'm about to lose my federal job and it will be hard to find a job at age 72. Yeah. It's awful and it's scary. People are losing jobs. People are losing benefits. Stephen Sayers says the corporate media is biased. I agree. Exhausted liberal, I was saying it for the last 3 years. Okay, well then, no, I guess no one listened to you, and you were just Okay, so 3 years, 2022. So in 2022, Joe Biden's in the second year of his term or so. And you were already saying that Joe Biden is too ill to run for re-election. Yeah, I'm not buying it. I'm not really buying it. Gin Up the Base says, Chuck John, among many, many things, the Democrats shit the bed about Biden never should have run for second term. He said he was a transitional president. He lost Gen Z, who sees just another liar. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. Like I said, hindsight's 2020. I think at the time, I think most of us, maybe a few of you protested or something, but when Joe Biden announced re-election, I think we were all like, okay. At least I was. I don't remember there being a big outcry about Biden running for re-election because he had been doing really a fantastic job. Not perfect. Not everyone liked him. Not people will find some things he could have done better. No one's perfect, and I'm not saying Joe Biden was perfect, but I thought like I've said this many times. I think he was the best president within my lifetime. Got the most things done. We were making progress in all kinds of things, whether it was healthcare and medical costs and drug prices, whether it was working on climate change, of course, the economy booming. It's seeing numbers we hadn't seen in decades and decades and half a century and more. I mean, he was doing a great job. So when he said he was going to run for re-election, I didn't hear anybody go, no, 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 no. And I just don't think I think people are being disingenuous now when they say, oh, he should have never run. Yeah, well, woulda, shoulda, coulda. And at the time, it seemed like the right thing to do. Keep him going. Let's keep it going. Let's keep continuing Bidenomics, the big Biden boom, which is what we were going through. Cynthia C is here. Hey, Cynthia, good to see you. Cynthia says, do you think Biden possibly found out about cancer during presidency? That is the reason he stepped down. Now finding out now, or no? Well, no, I don't think he found out during the presidency. AM says, I wonder how our king wannabe is reacting to the real king of England, King Charles III, visiting Canada. Minus Kevin Anderson says, yeah, and Australia's Blue Sky Network always said Joe Biden is so old. Look at how Trump is doing. Okay, I'm looking and I didn't see shit. Cynthia C, if not, what was the reason he stepped down, and was it a mistake for her to run? Well, he stepped down because he was pressured out after that debate. It all came down to that debate. He did not look good. I'll admit it. He won the debate. If you just listen to or just read the transcripts, or you just listen to, like with, like if it was in a foreign language and you were listening to like a voiceover of it, and so you couldn't hear Trump's yelling, and you couldn't hear, and you didn't hear like how soft Joe Biden's voice was. You can see that Biden clearly won that debate on all the topics and all the issues. But the look. It was the look. He looked really bad. He looked really old and out of it. And that's when we had Clooney, and that's when we had Pelosi, and we had all these people coming out and really turning on him. And then Biden started losing support of donors. So he really had no choice but to step down. And I don't think it was, at that point, I don't think it was a mistake for her to run, for Kamala Harris to run. You know, and I think it was too late to try to hold some other primary, or, you know, it was just too late. And I do think Kamala Harris was a great choice, and I think she would have made a great president. I will never stop saying that. And I do think that if that debate, what if that debate had been even just 1 month earlier, and let's say all that everything happened, you know, and Biden stepped down, maybe even just a month earlier, it might have made the difference, because she ended up losing the popular vote by only 1.4%. So what if, or, you know, what if we can play the what if game, I guess, all day, but let's just not reinvent history and try to come in here and say, I knew this and I knew that. I don't think a lot of us, you know, knew, we didn't know shit. Okay, so Zos Liberal, I was under the impression he was only running one term, like he said, but they never said they were going to run someone else. Now we have fucking Trump. That's why millions of people stayed home. There was a huge outcry for him not to run, but people never left their bubbles to, I guess, listen. I don't recall a huge outcry for him to run. Now, I don't know. Am I reinventing history, or am I being disingenuous? I do not recall a huge outcry for Joe Biden not to run, or to rerun, or to run for re-election. I do not recall that. I really, really don't. I sincerely do not recall that. Maybe I was in my bubble. Maybe because I was totally pro Biden, and I thought Biden was doing a hell of a job. Like I said, I think the best president I've seen in my life actually gets shit done. Good shit. Maybe I was in a bubble. But I do not recall there being a huge outcry for Biden not to rerun or run for re-election. I do not recall that, sir. Brooklyn says George Clooney started the step down Biden issue. Steven Sayers, at least President Biden talked about reducing student debt, and President Biden did a lot of loan forgiveness. Some of that got shot down in the courts, but he was, through executive order, he was able to help out a lot of people out. And now we see that Trump is reversing all that. And it is affecting not only that will affect the economy. When people aren't able to pay those loans, or, you know, they file bankruptcies, more and more you might see, you know, let a smaller enrollment now. You know, what Trump is doing is it's going to have a negative, like, domino effect in all this. Cynthia C says, "Wow, nice compliment, best president during your life." Absolutely, and I'm 64 years old, so technically I was alive during JFK. I was alive. I don't remember the guy. I do remember Johnson. LBJ was probably the second best president in terms of what he got through. You know, he was able to get Kennedy's main, things that Kennedy was working on, like, civil rights and healthcare. And then we had shitty Nixon, stupid ass Ford, the clown. We had Jimmy Carter, who I think was a great man, and I think did a really good job getting us through some really bad times, high inflation and all that. After coming out of Nixon and Ford and all that, we had stupid ass Reagan, another one who cheated his way into the presidency, and H.W. Bush, who was, of course, just a warmonger type of person. And then we got Clinton, who we went through a economic boom, created lots of jobs, brought down inflation, brought down well, he was bringing down the debt, but he had us working a surplus on our budget, right? Of course, because that's what Democrats do. Then we got stupid ass W, who lied us into wars, crashed our housing market, nearly crashed the banking industry, nearly bankrupted the entire country, nearly we were a hair's breadth away from going into a Great Depression under W. And then we get Obama, and through his policies and leadership, was able to turn that ship around and got us into recovery and got us into creating jobs, getting inflation down, getting unemployment down, all that great stuff. Again, doing what Democrats do, governing and righting the ship, and getting us into a good place economically. That's what Democrats do. And then from there, we go to fucking Trump, who not only intentionally botches COVID, in which led to at least 500,000 unnecessary deaths, probably more. Again, tanking the economy, giving millionaires tax breaks that are paid for on the backs of the middle class and working class people. And then Joe Biden coming in and cleaning up that mess and cleaning up not only a really horrible economy that Trump left him, but a really horrible situation with COVID. And under Biden, both of those things got turned around pretty quick, within a couple of years. So I do not recall there being a huge outcry. I'll say this again, a huge outcry against Joe Biden running for a second term, because he had turned us around, got us through COVID, turned our economy around, had the envy of the world. Our economy was the envy of the fucking world when Joe Biden was president. I don't recall a huge now maybe exhausted liberal didn't want it, but that doesn't mean there was a huge outcry. I do not recall. Brooklyn says student debt is ridiculous now. Deborah Murphy says Trump just announced he is going to get the drug price down to $40. Believe it when I see it. See, that's another difference. Biden wasn't the best speaker in the world, but he got shit done, and the proof is in the pudding. Trump will say whatever he thinks he needs to say, but then he doesn't really do anything other than what he's probably been put there to do, and that is to get taxes lowered for the rich. Jennifer Bastrugger, John, what are you saying about what you are saying about Biden is spot on. At the same time, though, the Joe Rogan sphere of influence thinks all of that is bullshit. Yeah, and those folks who listen to Joe Rogan or they listen to anything over there, they're in a cult, they're brainwashed, and that's part of the problem. is this brainwashing of America that we've seen. It's been going on for over 30 years now with Fox News, like, and I've talked about Rush Limbaugh in this past few days, the right-wing media propping up people like Rush Limbaugh or Glenn Beck or Bill O'Reilly or Sean Hannity, putting them on thousands of stations, not really caring about the ratings. They will carry them. They will prop them up. Hey, Christina Weibel. Christina's here. Good to see you. Barbara Nicholas is here. Hey, Barbara, thank you for being here. I appreciate you being here. Barbara says, don't forget he had to deal with C-19 also. I don't know what that is. Is that bird flu or something else? I don't even know. You might want to expound on that a little bit, because might have to refresh my memory. Cynthia C says, Trucker John, very curious. Have you ever visited any presidential library? If you had to choose one Republican library to visit, who would it be? I don't believe I ever have. And I say I don't believe because I'm trying to think. I know when I was younger with my folks, we would go on road trips across the country and stuff like that. So at least not within my memory as an adult, I never have. Now I know the Ronald Reagan Library. It was out in Simi Valley or Thousand Oaks, whatever it is. I guess it's Thousand Oaks. I think I've kind of driven by there on the 101, or I've seen the signs for the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, and it's kind of up in the hills there, just south of the 101, I think, or north of the 101. I've never actually gone in there. I remember, I think, driving by maybe seeing signs for a Harry Truman Presidential Library. I think, what was that, Kansas or something? Okay, so to visit a Republican library, it would probably be someone like Truman or Eisenhower. You know, I guess Lincoln has one. I don't know. I guess they all get one. Maybe Lincoln or Eisenhower. Maybe. I have no desire to visit the Reagan Library, or I guess Nixon. I guess Nixon probably has one. He might have his down in. Where was he from? He was down by Fullerton area. Is where he was from. I think there might be one there. Not Fullerton, but whatever that area is around there. I forget exactly. I have no desire to see any of those assholes as library. I hated Nixon since I was 12. I hated Reagan probably since I was 12, even before Reagan became president. Gerald Ford, like I said, he's a clown. I would have no desire to see his library. Certainly not any of the Bush's libraries. I have no desire to see their library. So it would probably be back like either Lincoln or Eisenhower, something like that. And it says, Brooklyn says Abe Lincoln. Yeah, so there you go. Barefoot Bear's here. Barefoot Bear says, "Hey John, hello, Truckers Lounge. I was excited for President Biden to run again. I didn't want to take chances. I wanted the tried and true." See there? So there's that. And that's kind of how I felt. I think I mean, I thought he was doing good. He seemed health-wise seemed fine to me. Now, as also liberal, I say he was lying about his health at that time. I don't know. I haven't really heard anyone say that when he announces that he was running again back in what was that, 2023 or something. I don't recall anyone saying that he knew that he had health issues back then. So I don't know. I don't know what he knew then, but he seemed to be. I got to believe that when he announced that he was running, whenever that was, I don't even know, 2022, 2023. I don't know. I got to think that if Joe Biden knew that he had, let's say, cancer at that point, I don't think he would have run. I don't think he would have decided to run again. Minus Kevin says, I like when Trump opened his mouth and Joe goes, oh, shut up, man. Yeah. Hey, Michael McAndrews is here. Michael says that Trump should be in prison. I agree. I've lost all hope. I've lost all hope that will ever happen, quite frankly. But he deserves to be there. No doubt. Pitched to create, talking about the debate, says at least during the debate, Biden answered the questions he was asked. Donald was a loud liar. Exactly. And I think I even made a little meme about that, or I posted something almost just like that. But I think I said, like, just because you're loud doesn't mean that you're right, or something like that. Pamela, we can talk woulda, coulda, shoulda all day, but the fact is there is a traitor monster in the White House. And the only benefit to talking about the past is to try to learn from it. So I don't want to shut down or shut anyone up totally about, talking about the past. Like I said, we need to learn from it. You analyze it. But it should be done in that vein of learning, and in try not to repeat those mistakes, and to do better on the next one. That's what it should be. It shouldn't just be blame, Biden bad, Biden idiot, Biden stupid. It shouldn't just. It should be okay. If something like this comes up again, like maybe we need to make 100% sure that you are healthy, that you are going to be able to make it through. Which I think at the time, Biden felt that he could. I really don't think that if Biden didn't feel he was up to it, I really don't think he would have thrown his hat back in the ring. But maybe I'm naive. I don't know. I might be a little bit naive on that. Who knows? Or biased because I like Biden so much. James Williams says that President Biden was crucified by the American press, or by the American people, I'm sorry, while Trump was released and brags he's the chosen one. There is a precedent for that. Paul Burrow's got to go. It's my one and only day off. Got shit to do. All right, Paul. Well, thanks for spending a few moments with us. Enjoy your day off. Get your stuff done. Jen at the base says Trucker John Kamala was a great candidate. However, saying that on The View that she couldn't think of anything different she would do from Biden was an atrocious response that screwed herself. Like I said, yeah, I mean, okay, so we point out a mistake. See, that's the thing. How many babbling, incoherent fucking rallies did Trump do? And yet Kamala Harris maybe misspoke or said something once here. Maybe she could have done better. Maybe there's another. We might have another. There might be a couple cases where maybe she should have answered a little bit better about the Gaza thing. We could bring that up. There's a thing here. There's a thing there. But Trump was doing this fucking every fucking day. He was saying stupid shit. Really stupid shit. I mean, incoherent, certainly not presidential shit. Every fucking day. Kamala Harris, okay, so she said one little thing, and that fucked her over? Because she didn't answer exactly on The View? On The View? She didn't say maybe she could have answered better? But here we have Trump talking about fucking sharks and batteries and the fucking ocean, and just incoherent babbling and non sequitur bullshit. And yet that's okay? That he doesn't get I don't know. I mean, he won, so I guess it was okay. He won. But that's the double standard I'm talking about. That's the double standard I'm talking about. Yeah, we could go back on anyone's campaign, and we could take a magnifying glass to it and go, yeah, you should have said this instead of that, you know. But with Trump, you don't need a magnifying glass. He's in your fucking face, and he's saying stupid shit every single fucking day. And so I guess the Democrats, in order to win, they have to be fucking perfect. And the Republicans, you can just say and do whatever the fuck you want, and that's not right. That's not right. Uh, Barbara Nichols with debate, they tried to cram too much into him. Yeah, maybe they over prepped him. I don't know. Had too much shit going on. James Wayne says, according to that story, those people wandered thousands of years with no country. I don't even know what that's about. I might be mid-thread on something that I skipped down. I don't know. Brooklyn says, remember the baby formula shortage? He got us through that too. Right. Joe Biden handled the shit, man. He handled the shit. Why does Kevin Anderson says, penny to create? That's what Trump always does. Someone tells the truth, and Trump is always like, you're wrong. How do you know that? Brooklyn, LBJ escalated Vietnam. That's why that's the thing I don't like about the LBJs, for sure. Absolutely. The Soulcraft, I wonder sometimes, is it because we on the left expect a little more? If our reps, I guess, unlike Republican MAGA, of course, I don't know. I don't want to lower the bar. I think it's about the media tilting the playing field in the favor of the Republicans. That's what I think it comes down to. Paul Burrows says Eisenhower was president in his first term when I was found under a rock. But anyhow, Soulcraft, but good morning. Hello, Soulcraft. Good morning to you. Thanks for being here. Brooklyn says I was in first grade when Kennedy was shot. I was about 3, I believe. I think I had just turned 3. So, Michael McAndrews is here. Michael says I remember coming home from school, and my mom was crying in front of the TV, and they were announcing Kennedy had been shot. I'm too young to have really any recollections of it, but I will say that the Kennedy assassination, it hovered over the country for the entire whole decade and into the 70s. I mean, the ghost of Kennedy was ever present, and I felt like I kind of felt like I knew that day, even though I was only 3 and I really had no recollection. I had no idea what was going on at age 3, but I kind of feel like I did because that whole thing, it was ever present throughout the entire decade. Cynthia C, have you been to Alcatraz, John? It's really interesting and very old and weathered from salt air. I have been there, by the way. What a terrible idea to reopen prison. Oh yeah, huge tourist destination. Yeah, I've been there. It's fun to see the old prison, and you can see Al Capone's jail cell. Yeah, it's a stupid idea to reopen that. James Williams says, good morning, Soulcraft. I think most people don't have the time to care what politicians are doing, and if they do, they don't think they can do anything about it. Stephen Sayers says, I still think Musk manipulated the election, and I think that's certainly possible. You know, and then we all know the quote of Trump saying, they basically saying words to that effect. Michael McAndrews says Nazi propaganda works for a little while anyway. yeah, it's gonna keep working until people start until these maggots start losing their Social Security and their Medicare and their jobs or whatever if they have jobs. Um, and then maybe enough of them will peel away. Oh, COVID-19. Robert Perez. See, that was C-19. Oh yeah, duh. And I had already addressed COVID-19. So I think at that point when I read that, so I guess in my mind I didn't register because I already had talked about COVID-19. But I'm behind in the chat, so yeah, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. Brooklyn says, "Why do you think Kamala didn't ask for a recount?" Well, because there were recounts that were done, and she didn't have to ask for them. Like the states do that. There were recounts. I think Pennsylvania had a bunch of recounts. I think there were quite a few of those swing states that were doing recounts. So I don't know, So it's not like she had to go, "I want a recount," because I think they were doing recounts. A lot of those kick in automatically when the elections are so close. They have automatic recounts that go into effect. James Williams is here. James says, "I remember President Kennedy being killed, and I knew the world had changed forever. Camelot died that day." In many ways, I mean, the 60s, that's when I was a little kid. I was born in 1960. I turned 10 in 1970. So I was in my aughts during the 60s. And so in many ways, it's a fun time to remember, being a kid growing up, playing with your friends, and back then being with my mom and dad, and we went on road trips. So there's a lot of good memories. But there's also a lot of really horrible memories about the 60s. And I think, namely, it's all these assassinations and the goddamn Vietnam War. Really, really horrible. So many people, even in our hometown, young guys coming back in body bags. This seemingly endless war that went on and on and on, and like Brooklyn said, LBJ escalated it, and we were full bore. We were just into that thing, and after a while, we're all like, "What are we fighting for? Why are we dying? Why are our people dying for Vietnam, for South Vietnam, or whatever? What the fuck? Well, let them fight. That's how I felt as a little kid. I was like, I didn't understand why were we over there, and why were we having people come back in body bags? And they would back in those days, they showed the war on the news. It wasn't like today where the media covers it up. We have wars, and they hardly show any of the battle footage or anything, because they know that it's not popular. When people start seeing soldiers coming back in body bags, people don't like that. Understandably, I don't like that. But during Vietnam, the media, I guess, hadn't learned that lesson yet, or somebody. I remember watching some very graphic and violent war footage on the nightly news with Walter Cronkite. I remember seeing a shot of a U.S. soldier being bayoneted. That was on the news, and I was like 9 years old, and I watched that, and it still sticks to me to this day. That was on the news. They don't do that today on the news. They won't even do that on YouTube. They wouldn't even show that video on YouTube. I remember seeing it, and I remember seeing daily death counts, casualty counts being on the news. And people were like going, "What the fuck are we doing?" So the Vietnam War was pretty awful. And then we were still living under the I think the shock of JFK just being butchered in broad daylight, having his brains blown out all over his wife in the car in broad daylight. And then you had MLK and RFK within just months of each other being assassinated. and you had the war raging on, and it was like, what the fuck is going on here? It was a very turbulent time. And you had like, and then, we had the whole sort of hippie movement, and there was like the free love thing going on, and people were smoking pot and dropping acid. And so there were sort of like these sort of freedom of going on, and freedom of expression going on, and this all that. But and that turned into war protests, which eventually really helped, I think, in convincing Nixon to finally get us out of there. But the 60s were very turbulent. Probably out of all the decades I've been alive, the 60s were the most turbulent. And we've got turbulence that probably in every decade we could go, well, this was pretty crazy and that was pretty crazy. But the 60s was just this whole coming out of the 50s, that, I mean, it was almost like night and day between the 50s and the 60s, even though I wasn't alive in the 50s, but just, I kind of feel like I know the 50s because my parents were from the 50s and everything. There was still lots of pulp culture and movies that were from the 50s. So you kind of feel like the 50s, but the 60s were just, it was just this, you had the war and you had drugs and you had sex and, violence in the streets, lots of protests in the streets. Many were nonviolent, some weren't. Eventually we had Kent State, which I think was, was what, in 70 or 71 or something. So, that was in the next decade. But yeah, it was a really, it was a crazy time to be alive. That's for sure. Steven Sayers, did commonly get paid to not ask for a recount? Like I said, there were recounts that automatically kicked in. Oh, Chris Truman was a Democrat. That's right. Yeah, you're right. And the question was, what Republican would I see? Probably either Lincoln or Eisenhower. Yeah, that's right. Harry Truman was a Democrat, and that would be Missouri. Yes, thank you guys. And we drove through Missouri, and I just remember I think seeing. I think we might have gone into that museum, and I'm trying to think. I might have been pretty young when we went through there, like 7 or something. So that's why I'm not sure if I recall. I think we did go in there, or at least we drove by it. Soulcraft says, my first political memories are the Iranian hostage crisis. I'd watch those day 200, etc. with my grandma. I remember that was going on. I think I was a senior in high school. When that happened. And I remember watching that too, yeah, on the news and stuff. I remember talking about that with classmates and teachers and stuff. Michael McAdams, as a kid, I knew something was wrong with Nixon. So did I. And I remember watching Watergate hearings, and my parents didn't even really seem to care about it all that much. They might see some of the stuff on the nightly news, but I was actually watching I would come home and actually watch the Watergate hearings on TV. And I remember telling my parents, Nixon's a crook. And they were like, oh, Johnny, you're so funny. Pretty great. Trump's library will be a dumpster on fire. Hey, there's Tom Bias, otherwise known as Gary. Kind of call you Gary. Hey, TJ. Hey, y'all. Hey, Tom Bias. Good to see you. Hope everything's going well with you. Cynthia C. I have actually been to Richard Nixon one. I got to spend the entire day for school in a place called Yorba Linda. That's it. California's child, which is close to, I think, pretty close to Fullerton. But yeah, Yorba Linda, his childhood house, their small little shack. The Soulcraft loved the Nixon movie, though. Even though Oliver Stone is nuts, Anthony Hopkins was great. He played a great Hitler too in The Bunker. I think I saw that next to the movie, and it put me to sleep. It was a yawner. And look at that. Wait, Michael McAndrews. I'm just now getting to your super sticker, $10. Thank you. Yippee, Michael McAndrews. I didn't mean to ignore that. Thank you so much for that. That's how far behind I am in the chat. So thank you, Michael, for helping the show, helping us grow the channel. James Williams says prison is for criminals. Trump is much more than that. He should be facing military tribunal for treason. I can't disagree with that. And I guess we made the goal. I just saw the confetti go up. So thank you so much. I'll scroll down to you, and I'll give you your yippee as soon as I get down there. Steven Sears says, Dinky makes me sick when he says that he saved America, that we were a failing nation. Yeah, it makes me sick. Just the total fucking lie. Total fucking lie. And it's complete. He speaks, almost everything he says is completely opposite of the truth. And the thing that disgusts me is how many people just will buy the bullshit. You know? And Jolie says Republican hypocrisy is infuriating. Like here's Soulcraft. Here's one for existence. For not existence. For example, Soulcraft says no one wanted to enlist during Biden as Trump talks to graduates that enlisted during Biden. Right. See there? That's a great example. Tom Bias says the whole Republican Party was poisoned by the fake news mantra, making all other news sources impotent. They never heard the truth. Yeah, they're in the Fox News bubble, is what it is. Roxanne Epstein, Republicans. Yeah. The Soulcraft says, yeah, there's the new Star Wars show Andor, and Senator Mothma makes a great speech that's too relevant to us now. I haven't watched that show. Maybe someday I'll get around to that. Tim Farrell says Trump's presidential library will be a prized collection of his finger paintings. Yeah, I've heard some people say it'll be it'll just have like Art of the Deal, which he didn't write and probably never read. It'll be his coffee table picture book that they put together just by copying pictures out of Facebook or whatever, and it'll be the Trump Bible. That'll be it. That's all it's going to be in the Trump library. Paramount fake magazine covers, yeah, in the library. The Soulcraft says, going to see if that speech is on here and posted to YouTube. She's talking about Emperor Palpatine, but it sounds like Trump. Terry S. is here. Terry says, yes, Kennedy's ghost and how the investigation was handled. Yeah, Kennedy's ghost definitely was around during the entire 60s and into the early 70s, I think, even. Tom Bias says, Brooklyn, New York 471, you won't find another jack-o'-lantern picture like that. I made that one. I'm proud of it. I think I'm mid-thread because I don't know. Were you guys talking about something? Keith Belize says, thank God for the Beatles for lifting the country's spirits after Kennedy assassination. Yeah, we had the British invasion. That was one of the good things, yeah, of the 60s. Midas Kevin says, yeah, but some states said, okay, Trump won a recount. Deal with it. Soulcraft says, my dad ended up being in armed air security because of all the hijacking. Yeah, lots of hijacking was going on. Barney Thompson says the only rigging that happened was the disinformation, racism, and misogyny. See, it isn't just one thing. I don't think we can just point to one thing and go, yeah, that's it. Yeah, because I do think media disinformation, misinformation, these were campaigns. I'm sure the Russians and we're really heavy into these misinformation campaigns, and other outside entities that would love to have Trump as president. Steven Sayers, long live Bruce Springfield. Sandy Harrington's here. News was all blood trails and body counts regarding Vietnam. Yeah. Gary, can I call you Gary? Says, same questions about Afghanistan and Iraq, even though we didn't lose as many soldiers. All right, why the fuck are we there? And why do we have boots on the ground? That's where we got the whole boots on the ground thing. I think was after the first Persian Gulf War, and then that's when I started hearing about boots on the ground. And then as we got into these later conflicts, what do you call them? They would start talking about, well, we're not gonna do boots on the ground. We're just gonna do air through the air, bombing sorties. Even though we had boots on the ground, but if we had to send troops, then they would. But they were very. It seems like by they I mean, like, I guess the media, I mean the military spokespeople, the politicians were very aware of this whole boots on the ground thing. So if there was a case where they could they could have some sort of military interaction without putting boots on the ground, they would say there's no boots on the ground in this one. That became part of the lexicon. Is that a word? Did I use that? Did I use lexicon right? Or no. Gary, can I call you Gary? I almost was like cynical Gary. No, Gary, can I call you Gary? The Korean, Vietnam, and rest of the wars were just echoes of World War II. Well, I don't know. That's another thing. It seems like the Korean War is like the forgotten war. We just got out of World War II, and we just had a few years of kind of like veterans coming home and starting families, and the next thing you know, we're back in fucking Korea, and a lot of those guys that served in World War II were going to Korea. That was a horrible, bloody war. But it seems like it never really gets its due. We talk about World War II and we talk about Vietnam. Korea was in the middle, and that's the war that almost never gets talked about. So I'm not going to pretend like I even know much about that fucking war, other than that it was probably stupid for us to do it. Sandy Harrington says someone described Vietnam War as the best trained and equipped army ever fielded against a relentless enemy in an impossible terrain, exactly like Afghanistan would be later. Brooklyn, long live Bruce Springsteen's eyebrows. William says, today people don't know the difference between news and political commentary. Mad Max, Slava Ukraini says the college kids were smoking banana peels in the 60s. Brian Thompson, just think some of those hippies are now MAGA. And that's kind of weird. What the fuck happened? What happened to the summer of love? And what happened to, drop out, drop in, drop acid, or whatever the fuck, And now they're fucking maggots. Now, not all of them, but enough of them, I guess. James Williams says it was Kent State emancipation of the American POC, people of color, I guess. It was meeting Dodge drafters and supporting them. The 60s and 70s were the most significant advancement in civil rights history, especially the 60s. Kent State. I said Kent State, didn't I? Gary, can I call you Gary? So sometimes you need to trim the eyebrows on your heart. That's funny. My name's Kevin. I liked Tim's John Cougar Small Town. Pamela says Brooklyn for I love Bruce, but TJ's eyebrows is legendary. Rubber Breast assassinations. What about the June 16, 1986 Maria Blanco killed my heart in high school? I don't know. I don't even know what that's about. Mad Mac 4 dead in Ohio. Yep, that was about Kent State. Michael McAndrews, $1 super sticker. Thank you. Yippee, Michael. Thank you so much. And now I'm seeing the $2 super sticker chat. Yippee, Michael McAndrews. And another $1 from Michael McAndrews. Another yippee, Michael McAndrews. Thank you so much. I do appreciate you. I don't mean to make light of it. I do appreciate the contributions there. That helps keep us going. Keeps the show going. Marshall said just missed like 10 minutes dealing with the aide side with the aide. Well, tell that aide, Tucker John says, to treat you right. Brooklyn, New York says I watched Watergate and Bobby Fischer bore her Spassky chest that summer. I remember that. Yeah. Bonnie Thompson is the final countdown. And here's Michael McAndrews with another $10 super sticker. Michael. Crazy man. Yippee! Thank you so much. I do appreciate you. Thanks so much for all the support of the show. It does help us to keep going. Keeps me on the air. Cynthia says, wow, Michael, nice donos. Yeah. More confetti. Yeah, we made the goal. So yippee. Thank you so much. AM says, Trump is a populist giving people a fake sense of concern and care with his rhetoric. This is a true sign of a dictator. Now, there are people that would disagree with the term populist. He certainly is a just say whatever he thinks that he needs to say, what he thinks people want to hear, but he doesn't mean it. I think a true populist, like Bernie Sanders, you can say he's a populist, but I think he was sincere in his beliefs. When Bernie Sanders talked about Medicare for all, he was sincere, and he wanted to get that done. Trump could say something about, I'm going to get health care for you, but he doesn't give a fuck about health care. He doesn't, so I don't know. I do have, there must be some other way of labeling Donald Trump, since he's so full of shit, and he's just a lying hypocrite, who takes popular issues and tries to make it sound like he's in favor of them or whatever, but he's really not. So I'm hesitant to call him a populist. Sandy Hearing, got to run. Have a great day as possible in these nutty times. And thanks for the gift. Yes, Sandy Harrington. Sandy Harrington got one of those memberships. I think that might have been Nerdless. Was it Nerdless who did that? Either that or Fancy. But thanks for being here. Thanks for coming in and hanging out. You're probably gone by now because I am very behind in the chat. But maybe you'll see the replay. I just want to say thank you for being here, Sandy, and I hope you come back. We are going to be on. I'm planning on being on probably almost every day. And so be on the lookout because the schedule could change. I don't know. And I'm going to have to end the show pretty soon because I want to get going. I want to make sure I get a car on time and everything else like that. But we can still go another. I can still go another at least half an hour. But thanks for being here, Sandy. I hope you come back and hang out with us. Gary Kennecolor, Gary, I don't understand how anyone could believe Pab's bullshit. It is, well, it's propaganda that they get force-fed from Fox News, and for a lot of them, Trump is saying and talking about the things that they feel. The racism and the bigotry, they relate to that because they are racist and bigots. So So they're like, yes, finally, someone who speaks to us. Yes, Mexico is sending us their rapists and murderers. All these brown people. Yes, Donald Trump. He's our man. He's their hero. Sandy Foltz is here. Hey, Sandy, good to see you. Thanks so much for being here. James Williams says, don't let the National Enquirer off the list so quickly. The assault on the fifth column has been carefully coordinated and intentional. Yeah, that's true. And, way back before there were those things like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and all the social medias we have now, the social medias of the going back into the 70s and 80s, and even before, the Enquirer has been around a long time, but the Enquirer, things like the Enquirer, and I don't know, the Star, or even like People Magazine, stuff like that. That was a big social media outlet. Those magazines and newspapers like that. And Donald Trump was on the pages on the front page of the Enquirer a lot. And then, as we found out during like the Stormy Daniels trials and stuff, that Donald Trump had a long time friendship and relationship with the CEO or whatever of the Enquirer. So wow, no wonder Trump was on there so much. If it hadn't been for things like the Enquirer back in probably the 80s, I guess, I would never have even known who Donald Trump was. But he got propped up by the Enquirer and by these other gossip magazines, and then that led to gossip TV shows like Rona Barrett. You guys remember Rona Barrett? She always either had a show or she always had some segment on on another show or something. There was like Rona Barrett, and then we had later on it was like Access Hollywood and Hollywood or Entertainment Tonight. Those motherfuckers were putting Donald Trump, and of course, then we saw the tape, the pussy grabbing tape. That was much later, but you can go back into the 80s and 90s, way before he was a presidential candidate, and they were propping him up, and he was always in the news or in the gossip columns or the gossip shows about his wives. He married this one, he divorced that one. He's the millionaire or billionaire playboy. He's the New York developer, real estate developer and contractor. All this bullshit. And for what? And here's another thing about hindsight. Now I can say, like, why was he in there? And now we know he was being propped up, and it started probably with the Enquirer. Absolutely. So, who made that comment? That is probably right. James Williams. That relationship with the Enquirer is what got him into the front page of all these other gossip columns and rags and all these shows like Access Hollywood. Way before. Because other than that, why would I, living in California, know anything at all about Donald Trump? There are hundreds and hundreds, even back then, there were probably hundreds and hundreds of billionaires, and who knows how many thousands or tens of thousands of multi-millionaires. Why would I know anything about Donald Trump other than the fact that he was being foisted upon us? He was being given a spotlight, and that was because of his relationship with the Enquirer, and from there it grew out into these other shows and other platforms. So you are absolutely correct. Don't let the National Enquirer off the list so quickly. And now that I'm glad you brought that up, because that was a main linchpin, I think, in getting Donald Trump's name out there. This multimillionaire / billionaire from New York City, that if it hadn't been for that publicity, me as a kid or even a young man in the 80s, I would not have had any knowledge of Donald Trump if not for that. But because of these shows, these gossip shows, they put him front and center. So I knew all about Ivanka, and I knew all about What was the other one? The fucking another model chick or whatever. That he cheated. He cheated on that one to go to that one. Then he would cheat on her to go to the next one, and all that shit was in the news or in the gossip columns. Why the fuck should I care? Well, I didn't really care, but why the fuck should I even know about any of that shit? Well, the reason was because he was being put front and center on these shows and these publications. Tim Farrell says it's amazing to think that music, Woodstock, and Muhammad Ali had more to do with the ending of the Vietnam War than politicians. Reminder for us when we feel the Dems aren't doing enough. Right. There is a power in numbers, power of the people. And if we stand up, make our voices heard in large enough numbers, then I do think that things can get done. And the Vietnam War is a good example of that. Because it finally, I think, scared Nixon enough when he saw the protests growing and growing and growing, and then eventually not just being the hippies and the peaceniks or whatever. It was starting to creep into the parents. We were like, yeah, we don't want our kids going off and being butchered in this stupid war anymore. Gary Pab told them what they wanted to hear. Yeah, never intending to follow through. Maggie May says, thank you to whoever gave me the membership. This is very kind of you. Yes, Maggie May. Like I said, I think that was Nurmus? What's the name? You guys can help me out with that name, right? Somewhere in there. James Williams, frying children with napalm didn't win any friends. And that was being shown on the news. And that was shown on the covers of Time magazine and Life magazine. Back in those days, that was our social media. And they were showing that shit. Whereas today, that kind of stuff really doesn't get the coverage. Bonnie Thompson says a whole TV show is made. I guess, yeah, when you talk about MASH, the funny thing about MASH is it was set in the Korean War. But they didn't really talk all that much about the war and what you know what I mean? Like, I didn't really learn much about the war. And I think all the writers and even Alan Allen said that even though it was set during the Korean War, they were actually kind of dealing more about the Vietnam War, and they actually had the mindset that this was like Vietnam War, even though it was set in Korea. You know what I mean? If that makes sense, I don't know. I'm not making sense, but I don't think I watched MASH a lot. I don't think I learned anything about the Korean War, like why we were there, what we were fighting for. All it was these guys in the MASH unit. And they were doctors and nurses, and what goes on at that camp, at that MASH unit, and trying to, do their jobs as doctors, and that aspect. But I didn't really learn much about the Korean War, to tell the truth. James Williams says South Korea exists because of the war. Well, that's a good thing. So that is a good thing. Yeah. Thanks for reminding me about that, because South Korea is when you look at North Korea and South Korea, they are like a night and day type of difference. Yeah, Chris, like tune in, turn on, drop out. Yeah, tune in, turn on, drop out. Pam J says no, they are not. I'm not sure. I'm so far behind in the chat. I don't know what that was about. Gary, can I call it Gary? The hippies were essentially conservative. It got twisted later. My recollection, because I was so young, I wasn't a hippie. I wasn't dropping acid at 8 years old. But I remember the hippies and the hippie movement, and of course the fashion, like bell bottoms and long hair and that whole thing, that all drifted down to me and to even school kids my age and stuff. But my recollection of the hippies were that they were about peace and doing drugs and having whatever sex they wanted with whomever and however, that was really my kind of recollection. Maybe I'm off. I don't know. Whether that's conservative, that doesn't really sound too conservative to me, so I don't know. Gary Kennecall, Kent State exposed the police state. Chris Duck says, I've quoted this before. The 60s had sex, drugs, and rock and roll. By the time I was a teen in the 80s, we had AIDS, crack, and Madonna. Just not the same. Yeah. And talking about, I'm talking about turbulent decades. Yeah, the 80s, with the whole AIDS crisis, was pretty bad, pretty turbulent. Bonnie Thompson, I started out in my early 20s a centralist, almost right on abortion. Now I'm a radical progressive. Well, look at you, evolving. I call that evolving. Sandy Folt says it's very hard to get a hold of the primary care center to get some medicine for my asthma. That sucks. I hope you can get a hold of them. Keep trying. Gary Kennecall, Gary says, you're correct, Pam J. I was born in the summer of love, quit acid, and still smoke pot. Pab is clearly a liar and a fraud. Yeah, Brooklyn says MASH is about the Korean War. Yeah, I know that, but I wonder how many people do know that. I knew that, but I do think that even the creators of the TV series, like, it came from a movie, but I think they even said that they made that with the sensibility of it being the Vietnam War, even though it was set in Korea during the Korean War time, because it did have more of a feel of a Vietnam MASH unit. But anyway, I don't know. But the thing is, yeah, I still hold by my statement. I think that the Korean War is kind of like the forgotten war. We talk about World War II, the greatest generation, all the time, and deservedly so. And we talk about Vietnam, because that was such a huge, I think, black eye on us. It was not popular, especially at the end. It was very unpopular. That's why Nixon finally relented. And then, of course, all these other things, Gulf War, Persian Gulf, all the things we've done, that's always been in the news, but not covered, like I said, not covered like they covered Vietnam. They learned lessons to not be so graphic, because that does make people not want the war. It makes the war unpopular. So, but it's not forgotten. These things aren't forgotten. But the Korean War does seem to me to get short shrift. Okay, they had a series, MASH, one of the most popular TV series in history of TV. I understand that, but I still stand by what I say. That the Korean War kind of gets the short shrift. I don't think we've gotten. And I know you're going to say, well, this movie was in the Korean War and that movie, but I just think it kind of gets overlooked a lot. Pam J says, "Me too, John. Work it. It keeps interrupting my fun." I don't know. I don't know what that's about. Gary, can I call you Gary? Says, I was influenced by Alan Alda from MASH, cynical and sarcastic, a typical smart ass, funny. Yeah, it was a good show. Jolie says, Hawkeye was my favorite. Gary, can I call you Gary? Great show. The finale really got me. I'll never forget it. The Soul Crab says, I saw they're remaking The Running Man. No Arnold. I think Gnomes will be the host. I'm just skipping down because I know I'm really behind in the chat. The Soulcraft says, my neighbor's dog back then was named Radar after the MASH character. Marshall says, the finale of MASH was so sad and real. Pam J says, Jolie, do you prefer Wayne Rogers as Trapper John or BJ Honeycutt as Alan Hill? I think I'd go with Wayne Rogers, but BJ Honeycutt was good too. But yeah, I'm more of a Wayne Rogers guy. Don Useful's here. She came under scrutiny because I think I might be under mid-thread here. I'm not sure who we're talking about, so I'm going to skip it. I'm going to skip it down a little bit. AM, TJ, don't forget your appointment. Yeah, I'm going to get going in a little bit here. Pam J says, go get some power at that rental meeting. Get going. If you've read down this far, you're going to be late. Well, it's not till noon. So, and it's only about a 10-minute drive and stuff like that. Joy says, hard choice, Pam J. Probably Trapper John. Honeycutt got on my nerves sometimes, but I still really liked him. Yeah, I like Trapper John. Gary J. John, if you have to go, leave the chat on. I guess I could do that. But I don't know. I should probably just end it. I think what happens is if I leave the iPad running, then the chat will stay on. So I can end the show, and if I just don't turn off my iPad, then I think the chat will still just keep going. So I guess I could do that if you want, because that's what you're here for. You're not even here for me. Pam J, I got 60 MASH eps on my DVR right now. They stack up at 4 a day. Wow. Robert President says, back in the 60s, there was no money in politics, but nowadays, the politicians are worried more for their wealth, so they take the money side instead of helping their constituents. Money has corrupted, definitely, our political system. You're right. You're right, Robert. Okay, I'm just skipping down, guys. Because I'm going to probably take off here in a couple minutes. Pam J, it was a time when women were just becoming empowered. It's difficult. It was a difficult time. Pretty great. I loved MASH so much. I submitted a script to CBS. It wasn't very good and was rejected. Well, at least you tried. You gave it a shot. I'm just sort of cherry picking some out here real quick. Michael Gander says Pripple, Microdot, Blotter, and Sugar Cube. What a trip! Oh yeah, see there? I told you. 60s, about the 60s. The Soulcraft says they did a couple new seasons that kind of featured Mulder and Scully's son. They just weren't up to. We're talking about, what you call it? The Truth Is Out There or whatever. Non-use says Palm Bandy's extensive lobbying for wealthy special interests and foreign government poses serious conflict of interest. She was a lobbyist for Qatar. Trump gets a plane from Qatar, whatever. Yeah, she was what 100 was 150 grand or 115 grand a month. No conflict of interest there, right, folks? Nothing to see here. Pam Bondi might be one of the most highly paid whores in history. She got, going back to when she was Florida State, was she AG or whatever? She took a big giant, I guess you could say it's a campaign contribution. To look the other way? Was it on the Epstein case or whatever, right? So she has that history. She was only too happy to take that money and then not prosecute. And then we learn about Qatar. She's taken 115 grand to basically give them access or to paint them into a good picture or whatever. So she's a very, very expensive fucking call girl. I like saying whore because it just sounds meaner. She's a very expensive whore. Palm Bandy. But Bandy. What did I say? Did I say Palm Bandy? You know, I might stick with that. I know some people call her Scam Blondie. I think that's a good one. I think I'm going with Palm Bandy. I don't know. It makes no sense really, but I like it. Palm Bandy. Could put that on a coffee mug. Yeah. So anyhow, all right, guys. I guess I should end the show a little early. Make sure I can get to my appointment. I gotta call up the VA. Sometimes the VA can take, if it's just right around the corner, it only takes about 10 minutes. But it might be further than that. So it might be 15 or 20 minutes away. So I can't really check it until I get on my phone, and my phone is being used right now to do this show. Non-useful. Pam Bimbo Bondi, Pam J. Palm Bandy. But Mr. Mandula, is the FBI knocking at your door? Not yet, Mr. Bob Newell. All right, guys, so let me go ahead. I'm going to end the show, and I want to thank all of y'all for being here. Tomorrow, I think I'm going to come on maybe after Hal tomorrow. I believe Hal's still on. I know he went to pick up his son last night on the red eye, and they're probably back now. I guess he'll be doing a show this afternoon, Hal Sparks. Let me do a little promo for Hal. I believe Hal's going to be on today at 3 p.m. Pacific time, his normal time. And I believe he's going to be on tomorrow morning at his regular time at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So maybe I'll just come on tomorrow right after. At around 11, he's usually done. If he goes long, I'll wait until he's done. So be on the lookout for the old Trucker John channel. I think I'm going to try to go daily for a while and see how that goes. But I'll let you know how my meeting went, or my clinic. How the clinic went. Hopefully that will have positive results. And so I'll tell you all about that tomorrow. Pam J says Hal has a show today, but he's taking Wednesday through Friday off. Oh, so he's going to be off tomorrow, apparently. I knew he was talking about taking time off. So to be with his son, maybe I'll fill in the gap. Maybe I'll come on, and maybe I will come on at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Anyhow, just be on the hit that notification. There is a notification bell, right? Hit the bell, and be on the lookout for Trucker John. I'll be on all during the week, and I'll let you guys know what's going on, and we can talk some more about whatever it is we talk about. Eyebrows, feet, Nixon, Trump, Biden, the 60s, acid trips, whatever. We talk about everything here on the Trucker John Show. Literally everything. All right, guys, so before we go, make sure you get that pad and pencil and paper and write this down. We've got some words of wisdom. Time for words of wisdom. Gather round, everyone. Time for some words of wisdom. All right, you ready? Here we go. All right, guys, so just remember,
Well, it's time to say goodbye. The show has come to an end. But don't be sad, no, don't you cry. We're all gonna come back and meet again. We'll have some fun times, hopefully nothing too bad. We might talk about war crimes, might talk about Baghdad. I doubt we'll talk about door chimes, but if we did, I'd be only too glad. So style of Easter, baby. The show is over, but could I ask you maybe to take a shower?
all again, right here on the Trucker John live stream. We're gonna do it again and again, right here in the Trucker John live stream. Yeah, the Trucker John live stream. We're gonna come back and do it all again. No, this ain't no dream. This is where we win, right here on the Trucker John live stream. No, this time to say goodbye. The show is coming in. Don't be sad, no, don't you cry. We're all gonna come back and meet again. Trucker John, on the road he rides, live streaming all through the nights. From politics to pop culture he speaks. No topic is off limits, nothing is weak. From Vegas to the highways, he'll never tire, shouting about food, talking about desire. He's the rebel of the asphalt, the king of the night. With a microphone in his hand, he's ready to ignite. Freedom is his fuel, passion in his soul. Gotta express himself, gotta take control. Moving through the country, keeping it real, no filter, no holding back, nothing to conceal. Rolling down the highway in my rusty old rig. I'm a retired trucker, but my spirit's still big. Living in Vegas, where the lights never sleep. Broadcasting my thoughts for the world to keep. From politics to pop culture, I've got it all. Sharing my views, no matter how big or small. Talking about food and movies and bugs, shining a light on all the social issues. No shrugs, I've driven through the desert, seen the city so bright. But now I'm living in a different kind of fight. From my apartment in Las Vegas, I hold the key, exploring the world through my live stream for free. For free.